Okay. Ready? All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to thank everyone online and for joining us this evening in the back of me. And could we have a call to order? Roll call.
Mrs. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Gust?
Here.
Mr. Shoemaker? Mrs. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Winkler?
Here.
All right. Let's stand and we'll have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for this opportunity and privilege to come together again and discuss and decide the business of the district. Father, just watch over us and guide us with your wisdom. Help us to be respectful and making good decisions this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that brings us to the approval of the agenda.
Okay, voting is open. Mr. Winkler?
Yeah.
Mr. Gust?
Yeah.
Mrs. Anderson? Mrs. Smith?
Yes. Motion carries and we'll proceed. Under old business, motion carries, which brings us to old business. This evening, we will be discussing and approving our reopening plan for the 2020 school year, 2021. And this is the beginning of it, right? Like we don't have the curriculum part. We're just going to be discussing. Okay. So we made copies of what's on the board agenda. Is that what you want to review first, Rob?
Yes.
Okay.
These are from the recommendations from the Health and Wellness Committee. These are some of the recommendations, guidelines that they are highly recommending. After the committee met and finalized all their plans, we sent them to the attorney for any revisions that they thought that any language would needed corrected. And the plan you have before you tonight is one that came directly from the attorneys. They were broken down into articles. If you want to go over any certain article separately, or if you want to go through the entire plan as a whole. We do have our lead nurse, Ms. Cindermuley here. We have Mrs. Brodegard here also, who was the lead of the Health and Wellness Committee. And we have Mrs. Dick here also tonight from the Health Department. So if we have any questions or concerns, I'm sure we can lean on them and they'll be happy to guide us.
Thanks, guys. How do you want to do this? Just go through it. That's good with you, Ron and Jerry? Okay. Okay, so Article 1 is temperatures. So on the comment from legal in the, can you elaborate on that, Cindy? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so No, not allowing visitors into the building might go against the policy that we have in to what we mean about allowing outside visitors into the building.
So would that policy change our current visitors policy?
It won't change the board's policy to change this document to match the board policy. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Okay. It won't supersede it.
Right, because our board policy right now.
Yeah.
Our board policy right now allows visitors, right?
Correct. So we'll get guidance from them if needed to change.
Guidance from legal. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Beth.
On the mandatory practice, it reads that all sensor will be screened prior to entering the building. The screenings are going to be in the building, right?
Doorways.
Under mandatory practice.
Technically, it might catch doors and that.
But I thought it can't be there because of the heat. I just thought we could put when entering the building rather than prior to. I just thought rather than prior to, it would read better maybe as when they were.
Or
when
upon
they were
entering.
entering. Prior to entering.
Good point. I mean, it's a point.
And then under mandatory practice also, we just have stay at home if the temperature is above 100. We don't want to stay at home for all the rest of the symptoms. I think all the symptoms ought to be, I think you ought to stay at home if they have any of the symptoms, not just a temperature. Yeah, that's under recommended. I think it ought to be under mandatory.
There was something, the legal team moved it out of mandatory. The nurses, you had it under mandatory to begin with, right? Correct. So the legal team moved it moved it down to recommended practice. It was the most I can do right now, like make a phone call with the guidance. I mean, it was presented under mandatory. The legal team moved it under recommended. I'm sorry.
Because on my top under mandatory, it was under recommended.
Information on this. It's just that this is out, it's laid out a little bit different. What you were seeing where it said all of the symptoms would be checked, that was under recommendations for best practice. And those are the things that the caregivers and our staff members would do prior to coming to school. So the mandatory part was just the temperature, because all of the other things would be completely different. And I know it wasn't on this copy, but when we had discussed this before, we had actually looked into getting temperature kits to be sent home so that the family had their tools to do all of that checklist prior to putting.
That language, I think, is taken directly from CDC guidance.
So I think, what would it do if we put stay at home if temperature is above 100, down about under best practice? Up here, we say you will be sent home if your temperature is above 100.
I believe the being sent home is in another article.
Yeah, so it's on
I think it's
Article 2.
under that.
It's under Article 2, symptom assessment, mandatory practice. If student, staff, or volunteer begins to show symptoms or has a temperature above 100 while at school, they must immediately be separated from other student, staff, or volunteers, giving a face covering in accordance with OSHA standards. Mhm, there. All right, so can we live with that sentence, or could we reference it? Would that be, could we, after that sentence, stay at home, see also Article 2? Does that help any? Oh.
Article 1 and
Smith?
Symptom assessment would be the nurses. The one that you're reading on, Article 1 is just, they're can be symptoms. They're not all gonna be, viral, they're all gonna be COVID. Just that there's some of it, they need to check out, but, they have the temperature,
Okay, and one other question on.
Okay, one other question on,
Under mandatory practice.
under mandatory
That
practice.
first paragraph, the last
In that
two words
first
are when
paragraph, the
possible.
last two words are when possible.
So just to clarify, when possible at the end of the sentence refers to the staff member that's probably doing an assessment or taking care of the person. It's not the whole paragraph is when possible. Does that make sense?
Ron, Jerry, you got anything on article? Yeah. In the document, PPE, this is reserved for word, if student staff or volunteer communicative have symptoms or have a temperature of 100 while at school, they must immediately be separated from other students, staff, or volunteers, given a face covering and monitored by a staff member wearing appropriate personal protective equipment and maintaining physical distance when possible. And that comes straight from ODE.
I do have a question.
Okay.
It said parents and guardians must pick up ill students from 30 minutes of being notified. Well, they can't pick them up in 30 minutes. Well, possible, yeah. The distance we have is
Yeah, I mean, maybe we ought to put something in there, instead of within 30 minutes, maybe within a reasonable time.
because the way our district is.
Yeah, it may take longer than 30 minutes for some people. Would you say within a reasonable time it would be acceptable? Lydia, Janet, you guys good with that?
All right, or not?
Yes, I think so, as long as we, you
I don't want you to take your stuff.
not at all. That's what we need you to Right, it's just a huge desert, but it's just sometimes I've noticed in the past few years, sometimes parents or parents are sick and you have some kind of a.
What's your suggestion that they don't show up?
What's that?
What's your suggestion that they don't show up?
Bigger back and shortness and have shortness of breath and trouble breathing, what from those whole body.
Maybe we should do it immediately, because some people can pick them up in 5 minutes, and other people, it might take them 45 to get there.
When we notify the parent, we may want to ask them if they want the child taken on the squad. I mean, that even already happened.
Something we fall into as we go through this virus. So, you know, it's really life threatening when you go to the right.
It would fall under medical emergency, which is when the nurses or the principals can make that call anyway. So if they weren't picked up and the symptoms would still continue, and when it was not a medical emergency, we would remove that.
So we want to leave the 30 minutes?
Yeah, and then, like she said, if they get worse, more folks will go.
Yeah.
Want to change it to reasonable or 30 minutes?
There again, they don't show up or see what's going on. That's what I would say, give them a second call, 30 minutes, see if they're en route.
Right, they may be in close proximity.
Well, if our employees, they call somebody, they're going to ask how soon they can be there anyhow.
Right.
All I'm saying. Give them respond. Like everything is said. If they don't come, there is time and they get worse, consequences.
There'll be reasons.
So do you want to leave it as it is or change it to reasonable? I went back and forth with our discussion. We'll just take 30 minutes out and put as soon as possible.
Yeah. That sounds good to me. I don't know if the other people. So that's what we're gonna do, please.
That's fine.
Everybody else, good with that?
Okay. So we're doing 1 and 2, right?
Okay, Article 3. That's the facial coverings. And if the governor's current mandate is still in place, we're going to have them when the children are seated.
Currently, the guidelines are when in public. But one thing that helps us here, because this was just reviewed, turned over to us at 2/19, following the guidelines that came from the governor, from the legal team. But the statement that they put on the bottom of the article allows us, if we have another change before we start implement, or whenever the change comes again, it allows us time to work off of the new guidelines until the board can come back together and approve it. So the legal team, what was our holdup tonight to get you a final copy in your hands was they were cross-referencing it with those changes that came out last night.
So was this changed from what we were presented in the chart?
No, I do not believe there was changes under facial.
Well,
Go ahead.
The mandatory practice down has not changed under level 1 where it says under in school face-to-face performance learning. They have a resident learning.
Where's that?
Where-
The first part of this is the first column, the mandatory practice. That's all for article 100.
But I was asking you which part was changed.
Which change?
Here were the comment is, the
Yeah.
district must provide written justification. That's provided upon request. It was moved from recommendation to a mandate because you have to do it. The wording is the same, but it moved.
Oh,
That's what changed.
Oh, okay.
I had a comment that I had written down.
I had
when
a
reviewed
comment that I had written down when I,
it.
it would be right at the top of mandatory practice, the first part. Should,
I just, this
I
is
think
my
just-
comment I've written down.
this is my comment I had written down.
Must, should we make
Must,
parents aware
should we
if
make
staff
parents aware if
be wearing
staff
the facial
will not be
covering
wearing the facial
or just
covering
shield
or just shields
because of maybe
because
medical
of
reasons or something?
maybe medical reasons
So
or
should we
something.
notify the parent?
They should
Parents
notify
aware.
parents and parents aware.
I'm going to suggest that is a very good question. And some of the conversations of things that did not get into this document will come back up in what we're calling the academic committee's work. I believe I can take note of that question and you'll see it on your next piece, your next section to look at. But can you state it for me one more time? So I can write it here.
I just said, should
That
parents be
should
made aware if
parents
staff
be
will not
made
be
aware
wearing
if staff are not
facial
wearing
coverings or just
facial
face
coverings
shields?
or just face shields.
Thank you.
So, on the last point, on the first page of article 3.
Face shields that wrap around the face and extend below the chin can be considered as an alternative where cloth face coverings would hinder the learning process. That doesn't sound like it's a choice.
it's an alternative,
It sounds like it's not a choice.
can be considered as an alternative.
Right, when face coverings would hinder the learning process. Maybe it's not hindering the learning process, but you just prefer a face shield.
I believe I saw this come out of the document. So when it says face covering, that means mask covering or shield. Mask or shield. Some people make both, some people make one or the other. I think the intent of this, the last piece is saying that the face covering has to, go to the chin. And then it had some clarification of, as an alternative to the cloth, for clarifying purposes. But I think the intent of this is more about determining what the appropriate face shield needs to be. Because I've seen some that don't. So I think it's an explanation of it needs to be this much. I can take a note about an alternative. But I'm thinking that was not the intent of this board.
So face shields would be optional. If I just prefer a face shield and it's the correct sizing, I would be able to wear it. Okay.
This is also paperwork.
Okay.
On the
right
piece
above,
right above
Sarah was
the
asking
one Sarah was asking about,
students may
students
remove their
may
face
remove their
masks
face
while
mask
eating or drinking.
while eating or
when
drinking,
appropriate
or
social
when
distancing measures are
appropriate
in
social
place.
distancing measures are in place.
So
So
the
are the attorneys,
you said the
you said the
attorneys looked at
attorneys
this.
looked at this.
The way I thought, the new
way I thought the new
mandate that started tonight
mandate
was
started tonight was anyone in a public building.
Well, I got this at 2:19 tonight. There were questions about when we add clarifiers to a content piece that sometimes it doesn't clarify, muddies. And in this case, we did talk about this, and their understanding is they could be okay with this because they understood the intent of what we were trying to get at. And at that time, appropriate social distancing measures could, which is also the other part of the guideline, that 6 foot distancing. Since we're both questioning it and the team did, we could take the clarifier off of it and take your face mask off while eating and drinking. I think it's the or that becomes the problem, because I think you should have your 6 foot distancing, take your mask off, eat.
Right.
The or out, but then the clarifier makes sense. Okay, taking the or out.
That's fine, because I think that's what we talked about. Well, obviously, you cannot eat or drink without and the second thing talks about social distancing places. Ideally, it's 6 foot. So I believe that we talked about before, depends on how many children are in a particular room. But if you have them 6 foot apart, they can take their mask off.
So we'll remove the or, and then that provides better clarification for while eating.
Can you answer me one question? Why is it K through 12? Because I've seen other districts that want three. I mean, that's the law. That's the law.
That was a change from their group. And there's two sets of thoughts out there that you do not need to use it from K down, but once their committee turned over to the next level, went a little bit more stringent because we're hearing that it's probably gonna go to that. So with the thought of keeping school open as long as possible, they're a vulnerable group for spreading the disease. And so we used to mask all the way down because they wouldn't be wearing it when they're in their personal 6-foot space assigned to them. But it's more about wearing the mask in transition, going to the bathroom, going to lunch, going out to the playground, the bus. So it was mandated for all. It could be very difficult for someone who comes in and substitutes a bus to figure out who's K through whatever and fourth grade up, maybe not. Some of the kids are taller than others. But it might be hard to justify trying to always have the rules every day being in place and equal. But they will still have that opportunity when they're in their what we're calling their 6-foot personal assigned space, their desk, not to have the mask on. The whole idea is keep school open as long as we can. Keep school open as long as we can. Is the committee okay with that thought?
Yeah, I just remember when the Belmont County Health Department came to the science and talked to us, that was his suggestion. That was at that time, that you know, third grade, as you said, but now I think it's crazy again. I think it's probably right. Try to, you know, we can't try to enforce K through 12. It's going to be hard for them. There's some that, you know, they have disabilities, they want to be able to. Well, and say, because we can.
You got buses. Have you thought about putting the aid on? I don't know if it's an aid. I don't know what the title would be. Have you thought about putting someone on the bus to help the driver? Because the driver's not going to be able to. Okay.
We're open to suggestions. I guess we have not met for a few weeks. But whatever we decide, my personal opinion, I want the majority of the group to make it. We do a mask policy that's been mandated. We can come on that very easily. Yes, we just don't need. We're kind of, I guess, maybe more with the health committee decided as far as whether it's 3 through 12, K to 2, as far as math. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Our thought about how we're structuring the sections, Jim's pretty valuable on this conversation, is we felt that there's a little bit of a hold up in any more development until we could get parts of this approved. And
Right.
I think then good questions like this, along with what we've already decided we are going to run with, will allow that conversation and more recommendations to come to you. So the idea is kind of 3 buckets here. This health bucket, what we're calling academics and getting the school day started and when it's going to start. And then we think the 3rd bucket is going to be transportation and food services and some miscellaneous categories, because really they're servicing whatever these other 2 buckets of committee members' recommendations are. So we thought that was a good process to go through. So you brought up K through 12, we're in the facial. Are you wanting a change there, or can you support taking that mandate all the way down into the youngest grade?
Well, it's strongly recommended. So if you have an issue, personal, there are allowances in there, exceptions. I guess.
The legal team did like us using the language strongly recommended. They commented on that.
So should we have in there, like, I know on the mandate that starts tonight, there's exceptions listed, should we list those anywhere in our? From here.
Legal consequences, but you take those issues individually when they come to you, and then you put into play, try to meet somebody.
Accommodations.
So when they come to you, then you can approach and do the accommodations, but they need to approach that transparent to the public, to have maybe like a little form that can start the conversation. You download the form that my child might need accommodation or something like this. And then that allows them to come to us. We can do the accommodation that way.
I have a question for Larry. Larry, autistic kids, all that in school, if they're going to wear the mask, they're gonna have to try it. Yeah, right. It's gonna be difficult. Yeah, that'd be my exception. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that definitely would be.
For kids special needs, they're.
I did see some research that said shields are working in instances for some of these populations. And so to tie back to the first conversation about alternatives, mask or shield or both are a good combination.
In our speech learning area, those SLPs, they're going to have some kind of shield. They can't use a mask to teach language. Right? It's going to be difficult.
For our younger students, yes, actually, we're making, I got Mr. Moore and Mr. Romick would attest to this. Mr. Moore's working on a program right now to make shields for smaller age children. Plus, he's been making some for the adults. So we have some that'll fit adults, and we'll have some to fit smaller, younger children as well.
So is the staff done?
No, I don't think they're completely all done. Last time I looked down there, Mr. Moore wasn't there, but he had quite a few laid out on the desk. Mr. Romick, you've been down there lately to count how many he has completed? The face shields from Mr. Moore's producing. You have any idea what number he has completed?
Right now, we've got about 250 produced right now. We're putting everything together. We've already given the kindergarten registration their masks. They have those ready to go for August. I believe 35 or 40 masks there. So, yeah, we just got our shipping in from Buckeye Educational on the materials, where Mr. Moore can complete the rest of them. So we have enough material to make 500 to 600.
And that anything as simple as unable to interpret speech could be hindering to the learning. So each student's case will need to be made case by case. So like you were asking if a special needs or someone with autism had trouble, technically, even if they aren't able to understand speech, that is per Governor DeWine, that is hindering. So that can be determined whether they need to wear it. You're welcome.
For transparency, did you list something about requests for reasonable accommodation should be?
I think the
better place to put it would be on the webpage that's being developed for all co-ed related things. Because once you put it here, well, I mean, we can, and I can run it by the legal team. I have to think, would it be better to be a recommendation to best practice to ask for accommodations versus mandating a practice? I can make a note for that, but I'm kind of wondering as our communications piece goes out, that it would be in the communications. Here's where you go to get it. Here's where it's posted on the website. I don't know how to say it, Bev. I don't want to say it's not important. I'm thinking maybe this isn't the place to put it. Maybe it's in a communications place where we're going to tell them where to go get all their information from.
The reason we didn't get that specific when we initially presented this plan is because, as most of this is noted, is that if anything that would come from the local health department, the CDC, the governor, would supersede anything that we have. So this is a general guideline that just lays like the foundation and the building blocks for this. So those things that we're going to be more specific about, like Mrs. Brill is saying, that could be communicated somewhere other than the policy with our committees. Anyway, everything in here was pretty much taken, as Mrs. Bohat just said, word for word from the CDC, from Ohio guidelines, from the health department, for the nurses' guidance document. Which is probably why the lawyers didn't change a lot of it, because we already factored it.
Bev, I'll reassure you that kind of
So one more question on the IEP kids, those kids would, do you think that it would be correct in assuming that all of them would do better with a face shield? Or is that something that's going to be an individual?
I think it's gonna be a case by case.
Okay.
I think the teacher will best be able to determine who the students are respond to that.
Okay, is that something,
Trial and error type thing.
is that something we should put in our curriculum piece, the academic piece, that the teachers can ascertain that information? Or
I think that's something we need to just articulate with the teachers as we're going through all this training.
As you're looking at this face covering one, if you have not gotten a chance to see everything, Article 15 is the policy for face covering. So something that you may think is missing here, for instance, talking about face masks and face shields as under type of face coverings on 3. So maybe you want to look at the two of those together. The one's policy and then this one's guidance under the overall restart plan. If you looked at the second page of that under facial covering exceptions, number 5, see if some of the things you're asking might be covered there.
Should Article 5, number 4 say, where an employee or a student? It just says where an employee.
I'm sorry, can you give me the number again?
5A4.
Okay, I think that's probably truthful. Good catch.
I would agree with that. I think, you could have an autistic kid, like Mr. Wakeman said, that's not going to be able to wear anything. Because they're not going to be able to function. You restrict them even more, then you're going to have issues. In addition.
Amy, are you done noting?
I'll add, students there too.
Article 4C, references students.
4C, students in grade. There it is. It's called out in place.
Yeah, they're separate.
God bless you. Where is that?
That same policy on the
Article 15?
yeah.
Okay.
4C.
Okay, so then under 5 on the next page, no 6. Under violations, do we need to put staff there, or is that addressed somewhere else? Because it just says students.
You're gonna see them addressed in your next round.
Okay.
One reason why currently you don't have a dress code. This is in alignment with your current policy. You don't put for employees. You look at them.
Gotcha. Okay. So
Violations of this policy by staff members, three down the
flipped it.
may result.
Then we need to add or policy. Because it says collective bargaining. There's not anything in there, is there?
You know what? I said that statement and I had to think twice. In the.
It says
OC one, it's
professional.
not. In the OC one, it's not. I think it says professional judgment of teachers. So we probably
Okay.
would say the teachers. We know that that is not in it.
Okay. So are we good with 3, Article 3? Ron, you have any more questions on Article 3? What did he say? I couldn't hear him. What did you say, Ron? Oh. Yeah, and I noticed that they were putting them out like yesterday, a bunch of them came out, and I think that it's beneficial for us not to, I won't say rush, but because we're not taking our time on purpose, but I think there's some benefit to coming out late because we have more information. It's a better document. And it probably will change as we develop. So how about, are you good with Article 3, Ron? 4. Jerry, how about you? Kev?
I'm talking 3 or 4.
I'm talking 3.
I'm talking 3 or 4.
Oh, that was wishful
Yeah, I'm
thinking.
talking 3.
Okay, we're on Article 4. Bev, I'll start with you.
I think so. It's the line under mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
It says sick children should be in a separate room. I just think if it's mandatory, it ought to be shall. It's probably straight from CDC. So.
Yeah, should be sounds optional. Is
Yeah.
it? I mean, is it optional?
It is not. If you have more than one sick child, it looks what I want to say that has potentially about 400 kids.
Yeah.
If there are 2, 3 sick kids sent down, and so like the position, they will be in a sick room, but we may have to go to plan B. We can't get them all in the same designated area.
So would it be appropriate to say sick children will be placed in a separate space when possible?
You can just leave it.
Okay. Is that all you had on
Yes.
4? Jerry, you good with 4? Ron? Okay, flip it. Article 5. Cindy, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I thought on the visitors thing, we could have Linda O'Connor reach out to our contractor visitors, or will there be any during that time?
Well, there's the possibility for that, but I think this is more in reference to like PTA coming in for birthday parties. Is that what the group meant by that?
Yes, it would be, say, I don't know, Mr. Caldwell's 3-year-old kid from you. Mr. Caldwell's, cousin wanted to come visit him, he would not be permitted to come in the building. That would be an option for the visitors to watch. Or if maybe in the past, the teacher had, someone from the community come in to read the book, even though that's wonderful, and they have to come up with another option for that. They wouldn't have to come in to the school that, possibly in
Grandparent day might be a good example. Like, it's not necessary, but it's very nice to do. And I think the way you posed the question is the reason why the legal team questioned it. Like, really, we're thinking non-essential visitors is probably what we might find as the wording for this.
So you're going to add that, or you think it explains itself on out through there?
I think if you leave it as no visitors, it's a little more strict. If you put non-essential, that's kind of subjective.
And
This is one I'd like to recommend pulling out the lounge, pulling under mandatory.
yeah,
Or band fire theater, and it is to be addressed in the extracurricular later.
Are you suggesting pull the whole bullet?
Yes, the whole bullet, because as we noticed, the extracurricular, there is information there.
Yeah, okay.
okay. You guys good with 5?
Well, I just have one question on the field trips and large group events.
Yes.
I mean, we're still having sports, so.
So far, we're still having sports
As of today.
As of the hour.
because it's not on the agenda. So we want to finish your question, or does that help?
Well, eliminate no visitors to school and eliminating field trips or large groups events where intermingling often occurs. I mean, there could be some small trips that could possibly still happen.
I think you have to think about transportation to those, because now you're taking another bus route to be disinfected, and students have to do social distance on a bus, and that field trip to get back, and maybe taking another sports team. I mean, there's any time that we can reduce, that was the thinking of the field trips, anytime we can reduce exposure. it's important to do so.
I think every time we looked at a bullet, we tried to answer the question, how can we stay in school the longest? And anything that opened the door to the vector coming in that wasn't totally necessary, you saw a bullet written like this.
You could take a virtual field trip.
Virtual field trip.
Yeah.
I think I'm taking one now.
All right, we're good with 5? So 6, sanitation and PPE.
I'll just offer up as you're working through this one. So this is where we had to do some work. We had a lot of places in your document where it said appropriate PPE. And when we make a statement like that, we put it under a mandated practice, that puts us under an understanding that we will be following PPE law, guidance, requirements. And in that instance, for one example, I believe the district's intent is that we want to provide everyone at least a mask. Because our county has a lack of resources, we don't even have a lot of places to go buy one, and if people don't have the internet, they can't even use Amazon. So by providing one, we thought we were doing something good for the district. But we don't want that requirement part put on it, because once you have to follow the laws for appropriate PPE, that means that we have to make sure that the face masks are fitted properly, that they are trained to sanitize them properly, and a lot more is required from us. Now, there's 2 parts of the puzzle here. If we take out appropriate PPE, which also means that they have this full garb on under those requirements, and that's not what we meant. We meant just the mask part. So we took out a lot of that language and put in, we need a mask. And we put that mask or face covering where that's what we were meaning. Now, there is a requirement that the district does need to follow, and that is we do need to provide appropriate PPE for what they call health workers, which would be our school nurses and anyone who is servicing a sick child. It probably is going to pull in our athletic trainers. Those people, the district do need to apply and follow those OSHA requirement laws. So that's part of where you see language changed is specifically to PPE. And that is why it was made. There is no requirement that a school has to provide masks.
Even if we require.
Now, we can say it, and then you're accepting those responsibilities. I don't know that that was the intent. It means a whole lot more when you say you're going to require them and provide them and fit them and train them and clean them and all of that good stuff that goes along with it.
I got another question. What if a kid comes to school and doesn't have a mask? What do we do?
Yeah,
We
we
have-
ordered extra.
We have a lot of orders, we have extras ordered. And actually, also family services, if they make.
And Tess is working with a group that asked how they could help us.
Ohio Job and
Oh,
Family.
Ohio Job and Family Services was looking for a way to help, and we suggested possibly one of the things would be masks.
So we just have additional available.
That was another place I thought, we may need more staff, because mandatory is cleaning common contact areas at least every 2 hours. And document when a new clean.
I think you'll see more of that fleshed out on, as it moves into the next committee. Also, when we get closer to knowing the staff and who's coming, might even give you a better number of needs.
Yes.
Article 7 is class transition.
Keep in mind that throughout the whole document, as long as the student is in what we call their personal space, their desk, they're 6 foot. When they're at rest, they can take their mask off, same when the teacher is keeping the 6 foot from the students. Anytime we transition, bathroom, lunch, office, then the mask goes on. That's the idea of the use of the mask. Until, that is up today, until the rules change again.
Well, I must have misunderstood the ruling that started tonight, because I didn't see anywhere it said about if you're social distancing inside a public building.
I will go back and ask our legal team. They may have had documentation that wasn't presented over the air.
Right.
Where he was focusing on public, and there might be something for education.
I would appreciate that.
And veteran privileges. Person has to go.
I'm assuming, we're talking about the teacher that
So we don't all
assigns the kids.
K through 4, all decide to take rest and break at the same time. There's going to have to be some, scheduling.
And I think,
Also allowing kids to go, but, they need to go one at a time versus taking my whole class.
and I think that's also principal management, that depending on how big their building is, maybe
What's the issue with minimizing book bags? I mean, they're not gonna have lockers, so
well, I think this to go with the guidance for parents of, you gotta keep your stuff somewhere with you, don't be like me and bring it back. Or you're gonna see this as guidance for others. Maybe some of the guidance that Jen and I were talking about, like, don't bring, if you know, on this day, these are the classes you're going to, don't bring all of your book. Be aware of how much you're asking the kids to have to carry, because they have to keep it with them and not store it in a locker.
Many of our
to reduce that for the height. So the students are reducing how much they're carrying. This summer, kids are carrying 58 ounces of nothing. And they're really good. So whenever possible, reduce the amount of gas. It's strong when you put it under mandatory. You could move it down into recommended. The way it's written.
I was definitely confused because I didn't read it the way it's intended. It's kind of general. I took it as not to use one, if at all possible. It just says minimize book bags.
It is generalized because it's covering K through 12. And there are some of those grades that they're only carrying this. And then there are some grades that have crayon boxes and lunch boxes and, you know, so
We can put more clarification in there, but when it's generalized like this, I think each grade could take it into their consideration of what they have to bring. Would you like us to add more to it, or would you like to see it when it comes out in infographics? And if it's still not clear, then revisit it.
That's fine.
We good with Article 7? Okay, Article 8 is medication administration. So the bullet number 2, no visitors in buildings unless emergency. Am I missing something? Why is that under medication?
In level 1, the general practices shared in each article, so you don't have to keep looking back to the first page. No visitor in building unless emergency, is that what you're calling out?
Mm-hmm.
That's on each article. It's at the top of each article under yellow because it changes when you go to a different color. So we're still working under the articles that were in yellow. Does that help?
Yeah, but that, again, that goes back to the term we first gave you, that level 1, your three rules are all that first column, and so it will be on every part.
It's for ease of reading the article today. You won't see that when the plan comes back together. You'll see it one place under level 1.
The Article 8, for the medication administration, that's basically for the nurses. That's maybe like really staggered medicine, like there's some really that have several like fill out letter, often has one that the medication out today. So the protocol for nursing for medication that's usually 30 minutes before, 30 minutes afterwards, for everything included. So that's how we would do stagger medication times, so you don't have 16 times all at one time. These are medicines. And, you know, limit the amount of kids that we have in that office. So this article is pretty much just for the nurses and medication administration.
You know, I just caught something in the beginning of the meeting today, and when I'm looking at these three at the top, I think I see what you're meaning, Sarah. If you're looking at the mandatory practices, and what does that have to do with no visitors in the building? It's just so you understand the generalization of being in level yellow. But somebody in the back brought up, we didn't add a blended learning or something. I think there's a word missing there. What we had to add is the options that we have for students. So it would be in-school face-to-face with blended learning options and increased caution. there's a word missing there. It needs to be options. And that would carry all the way to yellow. But honestly, it's just carrying the yellow generalization across each document. So you're right. Does it have something to do directly with what the nurses have to do when we're under yellow? No, it's just for ease of reading the document.
Thank you.
Jennifer, are you okay with the adding options? Because what it is that this is clarification for folks that if you're identified as one of those risks and don't want to come, there is the option for something else. Probably should say virtual also, blended and virtual options. Remote. Might be a better way.
All right, we good with 8? So Article 9, high-risk procedures performed by school nurses or staff who care for individuals with symptoms.
Under number 9, under practices still being developed, this is under recommendation of our legal team for what is going to be required of PPE for these teachers that work in these categories. They're expecting better guidance coming out, and we'll come back to that piece. So they just wanted to pull that out, bless you. They wanted to pull that out and make that statement, because this is one of those categories, if we said that these folks had to wear appropriate PPE, and here's an example, and it might be a poor one, this is not my area. If they had to do a hold, and it was in an emergency case, like if I said you had to wear appropriate PPE and you didn't have to wear it when no one's around you and you're in your 6-foot space, and then all of a sudden I instantly had to do a hold on students. I grab them and I do my hold. I didn't have time to put my PPE on, and then that employee has an opportunity to come back and say, if they caught COVID, I was in a well, the words aren't coming to me tonight. They have the ability to say they were in an unsafe environment because of the wording we may have chose. That goes back to that conversation I had about appropriate, that's the problem, PPE, and that means we have to follow OSHA law. So they wanted to go back, they wanted us to wait a little bit because there's guidance supposed to be coming for these categories. Now, obviously, some of the instruction there, we have time to get the appropriate PPE on, but not for all. You guys good with the upper part of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Article 10. Now, Sarah, you said, are you okay with the upper part? Right now, I think you can approve that they have to wear PPE. We just know we're going to revisit this one again when we get better guidance. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. The next one's crossed out, and I'll tell you why. First of all, and I spoke with, or at least with Janet, she may have shared with the group. The way it was written it's calling out a vulnerable group of individuals, and it's like a definition. It didn't have an action to it at the moment. So this is one we're gonna have to come back and visit. I wanted to let you see what the committee brought as a recommendation, but the way it also is written, it puts us in a difficult position, because we may be discriminating. And so this definitely has to have work done for this section. But here it is that you can see what the thought was, and we'll revisit it on another day. I might add a little bit more while I have the group together. One of the questions that we've been working on, and it will fall more into the next committee group, is about individuals that already know they might be high risk and whether they will be coming to work or not. How we should handle this is that we assume everyone is coming to work, and then someone who falls into a high risk category, and more of this will be fleshed out with language to follow, but they will approach us about feeling that they are in this category, and then there will be steps to follow. We don't approach them, they approach us, and then we go into, can we provide the right accommodations for them? And that has a whole list of steps that goes with it. So that's language that we don't have for you to see tonight.
Is the reason behind them coming to us is to avoid them, so we're not discriminating.
Exactly. There is a form that they can fill out. It's on the labor law page, I believe. Our legal team is looking to make sure that that is one we can use as it comes. In there, along with some of the other guidance that we were talking about, it would be clearly written out how someone can use the form and approach us about feeling that they are in that group.
So are we able to give this information to all of our staff and give them a deadline so that we're not waiting till the first day of school for?
No, because they may become high risk. You know, they may start school with us and then become high risk. They may have something that's identified on a high risk list, like their doctor may say, you are now high risk. And then, so that we'll flush that guidance out a little bit more, but I think timeline we can't do. I'm just maybe speaking too early at the moment, but I believe we won't be able to say, you gotta tell us by August 15th.
Wow.
I'm gonna guess someone's made that decision if they think they're in that group and are going to want, way before the school starts. I think they're gonna wanna start making those arrangements.
Any other questions? All right, Article 11, return to school.
The first bullet under mandatory practice. It lists at the end of the sentence, until they
It
meet
lists at the end of the
CDC
sentence, until they meet CDC criteria for return to work in school. Is that in a later policy what the CDC criteria is?
Suggestion is we're gonna see it change a lot between now and when school starts. There will be guidance coming on this one. We're working on it maybe early next week. Also about, you know, the staff keeps asking about if I'm out or I end up having to quarantine because I was around a positive child or something. Do I have to do sick days or what? How does that work? We'll have that much cleaner to share. We don't have it today. Okay, Article 12.
Training and education. So everything under the bullet of staff is what they're responsible for?
This is how I read it. Let's make sure that was the intent. But I read that we shall, under each of these each of these bullets is what they'll be trained on. Is that how it was intended?
I spoke with Linda O'Connor, because we're working together to see if we get some outside guidance for someone to come and help with training so that our nurses don't have to do it. And with that, we will be able to provide training we send them to parents, or maybe put on our website before. And we've already collected some videos from CDC and we've secured everything at the health department. And if the health department gets some things, then maybe they let us know. I might need to elaborate on that. Then those are the resources that will be driven from CDC and hopefully for the procedures that we might ever find be educated.
You know, here's a perfect example. The first day of school, the first thing you do when you meet your class is how do you properly wear your mask, how it's properly fitted, and how you clean it. And some of this doesn't take very long, but you need to go over it. So these are the targets to provide training for.
Okay. Article 13. Crossed out.
So what you see at the bottom is the note from the legal team. Instead of trying to summarize it, I just copied it and put it there for you. So this is another one. We cannot do the way it is written, but they will help us with this. So one thing I want to show you is all of a sudden we went to level 2 in orange. So I crossed it out so you can still see it, but this was the recommendation of what level 2 orange looks like. So we moved into a new category. Basically, we're following all of 1 with, and this became a little bit more restrictive under this section. So we'll have to come back to you with this. And for the committee that worked on this, it's my understanding you came from the Nurses Association, this language. And
We're nurses association and it's the public time, and we don't really have a lot of students at this time. It's this fall version. Mrs. Helen Ring from Mako had said that she had at least 2 students that this would impact, which is why it was listed, and I understand why it would be addressed. That
it will be addressed, but we have to always be careful about discriminating. So this will be language that comes back, but I wanted to share, since it was the last hour, this was shared back with the legal team of where the language came from.
you go 14 to a combined red and purple for us. There's not much difference.
So I saw this is the general question, I saw other districts referring to level green.
I really don't think green's gonna happen.
Right. I agree with what we are doing, but I just wondered. Right.
So I wanted to share that with you. Early on, someone brought up the comment about others have released their plan. That color system was developed very early for schools who developed their plan fast. And then the state came out and did the map coloring. So they were ahead of the game, and then the state didn't go with the same color system. And then these ladies have followed along, and gentlemen have followed along with now what the state had done. So a positive thing is now we're aligning at the same time as the state.
It's less confusing.
Article 15, face covering policy. Any other questions or observations? Huh? Oh, well, look at it.
Okay, so what kind of mask are those?
I'm sorry. They're just the blue and the white is visible.
For fabric, I think.
They're just.
I know, but I'm asking. We have material or fabric, so I'm assuming that's fabric.
Not really.
Stay on there.
Non-woven fabric,
Yes, it is fabric.
I guess, yeah. Like a paper. Yeah. Still mask.
Under item 4G, it says, in addition, the district will provide each student with a cloth, reusable and washable mask. Those are washable?
No. It's the ones that we have, they're the cloth reusable.
Okay,
They're only they'll be here probably within a week or so.
okay.
They're just gonna be a black cloth mask just like this. That's what we have ordered.
Anything else on face coverings?
Since there's nothing else on face coverings, we'll go on. Article 16. General guidelines under extracurricular, co-curricular activities.
So let me point out that if you move into this section, and I believe Mr. Romick led up this committee, they have gone a little bit more restrictive, so you're seeing the category being a combined yellow-orange. So you'll see that level being spread until we move into a red-purple.
Any other questions or observations on Article 16?
Well, let's try and compare
Sorry.
current plus.
So there was
Thing that changed was number 2 under the protocol to continue. It listed a 72-hour period, and it's after last night that went to at least 24 hours without fever.
And the 10 days is still in there. It's 24 hours after the last year. And then the next one down, is it 1? I read this today, but 2 has an and after it. Is it all 3 or is it?
And it makes it all 3.
Well, with the second.
Oh, wait, 2 and 3 go together. They have to have a written release to be able to come back. 2 and 3 go together. Oh, no, it's all three, Mark, right? So, on Article 16, 1, 2, and 3, the anyone receiving a positive test may only return to participating with the team if 24.
Right, if a student is around somebody that has tested positive, okay, or has come to a practice with somebody with a temperature above 100 degrees, okay, in order for them to return to practice, they're either going to have a negative test, okay, in order to come back, or they're going to have to wait out the basic time of 10 days. So they
No,
have
we're talking about the next one, someone that's tested positive.
right, somebody that's tested positive now, originally, and these are, a lot of these are CDC guidelines. It was originally a 72-hour after resolution of symptoms, but it's moved back to 24 hours. But you still have to have 10 days since you first, the symptoms first appeared. So if symptoms appeared on Monday, you're going to have to wait a 10-day period before you can come back. That's one of the, anybody that's positive is going to be out 10 days. They're also going to have a negative test before they can come back. They also have to have a written release from a doctor, from their medical provider.
So let's put another and in there.
After one.
Good catch.
And then is there any recommendation from the CDC on when you can get your test? Like,
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying, but one of the things that just, they have come out with, even the Ohio Department of Health, is that they're not sure the first 2 or 3 days that your test could be a false negative. If I go 2 days, if I'm around you and you test positive, and 2 days later I go get tested, there's a chance that mine could be false negative. If I go test it again at 8 days, then I may test positive for it.
Right now, it's coming back to the hospital in the country. The idea is, well, I'll just go get tested if it's negative. I'm fine. No, that's not the case. If any more lifestyle, any more, 10 days. Average is now, we said 5 to 7 days before the test was reliable. So that's kind of lifestyle.
One of the things that you run across is a lot of asymptomatic kids because they're very healthy, and an asymptomatic athlete could be walking around infecting other people unknowingly. Somebody may come up with a fever, turn up with a fever, and not realize where they got it from. It may have been one of their teammates who was asymptomatic at that time.
so do we need to relook at the first one, the individual sent home? If there's anyone who is affiliated, someone that was, I guess what I'm thinking of.
Right, that could be a ball boy on the sideline. Okay, let's say we're going to the football game and the ball boy shows up with the team. Okay, everybody has to be tested. We're going to have to limit the number of people on the sideline or on a bench or anywhere else. And that ball boy shows up with 100-degree temperature. We're going to have to send him home. So he's affiliated with the team. And anybody that he's around, and later on we'll see as it runs into it, we're recommending that kids not travel with other kids. Because if I get to practice and Jerry rode the car with me and I have temperature over 100 degrees, Jerry's going home too.
Right. But what about the negative test? Shouldn't there be a time frame? So they're not, if they go out and get a test, it might be too early.
I agree. You could write in there a test can't occur. A test has to occur after a certain day. As like the nurse said, it's what is they recommend the 7-8 day mark. That then it's not a false negative.
I don't know if there's any CDC guidance on that, parenting wise.
I have the question out to help even with in school, the same if you test positive in school. I don't have it yet. They're looking, they keep hoping we'll get better guidance from the government.
Do you guys have any specific questions or scenarios where Mrs. Dick or Rob said that she needs to leave?
You're needing to possibly leave. I was asking Mrs. Dickey.
Personally, I think 16 is very confusing. It's just like that. Anyone receiving a positive test, they may only return to the team 24 hours after resolution of symptoms. And I don't know, it should be, to me, it should be 10 days after plus 24 hours. I just have, it's just confusing to me the way it's just really reading it. I don't know if it's somebody else, but
So you're saying the flip flop, the 10 days and the 24 hours?
10 days is different.
Yeah.
You're gonna be out, you're gonna be out, you have what you gotta have the 24 hours that you're, no fever, no symptoms, and, you know, no fever, we're taking medication and things like that. You can't be taking medication for that last 24 hours.
Right, if the symptoms are still present after 10 days, they're still out.
Right. They're gonna be asymptomatic, and at least 24 hours without any kind of medication.
Right. And I think that may be covered in one of the other articles.
So there was more pages to this, there are different articles. Athletically.
Some of it isn't going to be implemented tonight. It's going to be concession stands, spectators, and
Right, some of the things, spectators, whether you know, the concession stands, a number of different areas. There may be guidance coming out later from State Department, from the High Department of Health, things like that, on those types of things. So, you know, we'd rather leave it, you know, the board to discuss at a later date, because none of those things will come into play until the end of August.
We need some guidance now for teams that are skills practicing.
Right, we're gonna start August 1st. The athletes are gonna start, so it's kind of like imperative that we have some guidelines set in place, because those kids are gonna come in. And, you know, we've talked to the trainers and everybody, and the coaches, that way they have guidelines to go by when that first practice starts.
Anything else on Article 16? Article 17. Under the mandatory practice, it says ATs will have their temperature checked daily, their own?
Yeah.
So do we not want to put like ATs and coaches and, like, why are we putting just athletic trainers right there?
Yeah, I think we ought
That's just how the language is.
I get the question.
Why do we have just the ATs will have their temperatures checked daily? Why, I mean, it should be.
Coaches
Put them all
and
in one category, ATs, coaches.
all staff.
athletes.
Right, we did, and the athletic trainers requested that be in there. We met with the athletic trainers separately, and the athletic trainer said, make sure that we list that in there. Specifically, that the athletic trainers have to have theirs checked and everything. They, let people know that they're doing it also.
So we want to add our coaches and just all staff. I mean, I get what you're saying, but that sounds like we're going to run temperatures on our athletic trainers, but not our coaches or.
Right, well, it's going to start with the athletic trainers, so they know they have to be healthy in order for everything else to run underneath of them. Because they're going to be basically the primary care provider, I guess you would say, on premises at that time where everybody reports to them.
If we help the ATs though, the coaches saw that the ATs have to do that. I don't think that's language that hurts, does it? Just add coaches and staff.
Right.
That's gonna have to be coordinated because you're gonna have people at different locations needing temperatures checked.
Right, you're going to have, you may have football, volleyball, cross country, everybody going on at the same time, but the athletic trainer may be the one, and they're going to have to make sure each coach knows, hey, listen. Yes, Mr. Clutter, we've already covered it. The monitors were in good shape.
So if I put something like coaches and volunteer staff,
Which is all staff.
do you consider your volunteer staff? They have to approve it. Okay. Anything else on 17?
My preference is coaches will collect all athletic physicals, certificates, ATs, do will retain such documents in court policy. Or then anyone will have copies of physical.
No, they wanted to collect them. One of their questions was they wanted to collect them because they wanted to know the medical history of all the kids to begin with. That was normally we turn them in the office to begin with. But they requested that they could collect them because they want to know the medical history, especially with COVID-19 and everything, of specific kids, so they'd be aware of them.
Well, say, copy of the office.
Right, right.
Copy of there. Okay.
It says coaches will be required to wear face masks in accordance with board policy, including while inside of athletic facilities. Shouldn't it say the athletes also? I mean, of course they don't have to wear them while they're playing, but.
Well, and one of the things with the athletes is they come in, some of the recommendations coming out right now for the football games is that they not even go back in the locker room at halftime. There's a lot of different guidelines coming out now with the OHSA. They're making recommendations, and that some of them are pretty far-fetched if we play. One of the recommendations is that they put a beanbag down and the center take the ball for the huddle with them. The referees never touch the football. And they put a beanbag down, and when the center comes up, he places the ball by the beanbag, the referee takes the beanbag. So there's a lot of different moving parts right now. There's a lot of moving parts right now in order to plan that. And some of the guidelines, it's tough for that kid. One of the things that we considered was that football player, one of the recommendations is if you're not actively participating, the recommendation is to wear a mask. Well,
that's okay, but where does that football player put that mask when he comes off the field, or where's it land on the side, or a lot of those things. Same with a volleyball player. Volleyball player, the coach is shuffling in and out. That volleyball player, it's not like they have a mask hanging on the side. Who gets what mask? And I
I
feel like
guess I
Brad
was
was on
thinking
that.
more of locker rooms before and after,
Right.
but that isn't addressed yet. Because the coaches will.
We get on Article 18.
Doesn't think we need to add athletes. Who wear face masks. And at least locker rooms.
Students and staff or athletes, coaches and athletes, staff and athletes.
Staff and athletes.
That'll cover the,
Yeah, coach just had athletes on the field.
but if you say staff and athletes, then that covers the athletic trainers too. Right? And volunteers.
Yeah, when you say staff, yeah, that includes everybody.
Okay. Now we get on 18. Article 19.
No, I'm looking at the guidance, sorry, I'm looking for the guidance that came out from, they kind of list how you're cleaning up this language, coaches, athletic trainers, and officials. Are you wanting to put any kind of language like that in there?
You mean like officials? Address?
Officials should wear face coverings at all times, and players should wear face coverings when not on the field or court of play, except for one of the following exceptions.
The OHSAA just come out with some strong recommendations that officials should wear face masks, coaches while the sideline coaching should wear face masks. Anybody affiliated that's not on the team playing in a game, all boys, everybody should have face masks on. All should be cleaned constantly. A number of different things that they've come out with. Now, the problem is when you get to those things, because they're recommendations,
Set the ball and everything else. You have another officials crew that will come in and say, we're wearing face masks, we don't want to touch the ball. So it's kind of a,
Yeah, but when you're paying them and they're coming to your field, do they have to follow your policies?
no, because once they walk on the field, they're in charge. They'll tell you that. Even though you have a policy, unless it's a mandated policy. If it's a recommended one, that's the problem right now. We're getting all recommendations, no mandates.
Now it comes down from the OHSAA.
Right. They haven't made a mandate yet. They're just recommendations.
So how about the Ohio Department of Health as a responsible restart Ohio for contact sport practices and non-contact sport competition? They have mandates and recommended best practices.
Well, under those guidelines, those came out this summer from the Ohio Department of Health. Those were followed by all athletic teams that wanted to participate. In other words, when they had the big tournament in Columbus, they had to test everybody at that facility prior to that game before they were allowed to play in that game. Those mandates, they put that mandate in and it went away July 15th.
that players will be tested for the game. All contact sports are still under the governor's order that nobody can participate against each other. You can play against your own school. We can have open gym for basketball, football can play 7-on-7 against each other, but he hasn't lifted that yet. Unless he lifts that, we're not going to play a scrimmage in football. Now, volleyball can still go play. Volleyball has been declared a non-contact sport, so they're allowed to go play. But football is still a contact sport. Basketball, soccer are all contact sports. He still has that mandate in place, and he hasn't lifted it yet. The NCAC Division III college conference in Ohio made up of about 10 schools, just canceled all fall sports last night, through December. The OAC is supposed to be following suit with them. If I got this right. I get to don't know that.
And all of our coaches know that possibility, right? Anything else on 18?
The only thing on, I guess we're not on 19.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah, can we add that? Because that kind of also takes the monkey off the athletic trainer or the coach's back, later, if they show up with a temperature, it's not just, well, I took his temperature, I think. Now we've got a record. We took it, this is what it was. It wasn't high,
Our
Well, and a
contract
lot of
is
what the
actually
committee
for that
talked about
too.
too was we were trying to protect, our concern is protecting the kids as much as possible. It's isolating the kids away from the spectators, whether they're coming in and out of the facility, whether they're on the field, whether it's cheerleaders at halftime, where do they go? If it's band members, you know, how do you isolate the band members away from the spectators, you know, so there's no interaction there.
Anything else on 19? Article 20, game situations. Anything on 20? 21, transportation under extracurricular, co-curricular activities. Are you social distancing on the bus?
Or did you talk about that? When you're on the bus, I mean, we're talking how many per seat. I see where it says, yeah, I mean, how they're going to enter, fill the back.
Right, and that's going to go with the transportation policy, whether or not, how many we can put per seat, how many there are per team. We're going to have to look at that, you know, and work with Mr. Clutter on whether or not we take 2 buses, 3 buses, how many buses we're going to need to take, you know, for staff to divide it up. And the whole gist of the thing was we want everybody to travel. One of the things we discussed was, do you allow kids to go with their parents to the game? You know, that was one of the things that was thrown out. Well, just let the kids go with their parents. Well, the whole problem with that is when Johnny's in the car with Uncle Sam and Aunt Susie and everybody else, you don't know who they're there with. Well, when they get to the game, they've been with 6 other people already. If we put them all on the bus prior to the game, coaches, ball boys, cheerleaders, players, they've all been temperature checked. We know they're all good. Now we take them to the game, we keep them isolated away from people. They go in the locker room, they're by themselves, you know, if they stay isolated. You know, everybody's been checked. We can't have somebody coming to the game and showing up and pointing to the sideline with them. We have to avoid that.
If there was a way to check them when they got there, so they were just going with who they normally live with, it would be one thing, but to coordinate that at a way.
We may be revisiting this one again because, what came out from the health department doesn't have guidance on it. They have a recommendation for they use to carpool, to encourage players to ride with others in households if possible. But mandated, they did not give any guidance at all. So we think you're gonna see something down the road.
What's going on over there? All right, so we're good with 21? 22, band under extracurricular and co-curricular activities.
We think there's gonna be other guidance. So Jennifer, what do you suggest that we do here? Because we won't have a good understanding what we're gonna suggest the band to do, right?
Right. I wanted to make recommendations for best practice. Any indoor practice will require social distance of a minimum of 6 feet and limit indoor rehearsals to small groups.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. Any indoor practice will require social distance of a minimum of 6 feet and limit indoor rehearsals to small groups.
You want to define a small group, like less than so many?
Well, it depends on the size of the room, because if you're 6 feet apart, minimum, you're gonna have a small group anyway.
Okay.
There's more guidance coming out from the, there's been some studies, Princeton, I believe it was. This study that they say up to 15 feet with a mask for singing, but for instrumental, most of the time they're outside, so that's dispersing further, and they're saying minimum 6 feet. They're also looking into actually masks for the instruments, like the bell of the instruments, so it muffles that aspiration or that.
Right.
Projection?
Yeah, okay. But even the Ohio Music Educators Association, I found my notes here, says to follow the National Federation of High School guidelines, which says minimum 6 feet.
Do they give you any guidance about ensembles and halftime shows? Did you get a chance to look that up?
Not on all of that yet. I think we need to work individually with our tree programs to see what the best practice is for that, how we keep the social distance.
There are some recommendations out there that different schools are going by, and I think the National Federation of High School and FHS is keeping them out, that they not allow bands to go to away games, away home games, and some of them are even putting out there that cheerleaders don't go to away games. There are some different recommendations out there.
So you've got an article in front of you that allows them at the immediate time to have some safety in place while they're practicing. And then we could relook at this article again with spectators, concession stands, and conversation, meeting. We know that we're also looking at band and choirs in the academic piece too.
So I know it lists temperature. You relist all these, you know. And like in the cheerleader one, it says, any temperature above, we do this, this, and this, but that's not listed in the band.
I agree with you, Bev, if it came from the committee this way, but I kind of think band, pom-pom girls, flag girls, or flag teams, I should say, I kind of think they should have the same guidance. This doesn't, I'm not sure why they were separated out. Mark, you said in that committee meeting outside of how they congregate after they perform. I think they could be one article for these specific sports. I think you need to relook at them. Personally, I think that there needs to be a little bit more guidance for these sports here. But I think
you would give them some guidance to continue with whatever practicing might be happening now while we flush out some more of this.
One of the hard things with the band was that we found is the band sits in the crowd. They sit right with the crowd. So that's one of the hard things to separate out is because you can't, it's hard to separate them from the spectators. You know, even when they're done and everything, because you can't place them on the field, there's no place for them. You know, there's very limited places, and I think that's especially why they did it with the recommendations of playing out away sites, just because it's even harder to maintain that.
Well, I think if most likely we're gonna have to social distance anyhow with spectators. So it's gonna maybe limited if we do have.
That also poses the problem of the crowd, but now you've got to support even more. You might have to take increased funds to support the athletes, and now you have to take more funds for the fans.
Are we good with 23? Ready to move on? Article 24, field trips and club trips.
Are you okay with? What you're looking at right now with adding that recommendation
Two.
for band on 22? I'm sorry, I just want to catch what we did for you.
Yeah.
Well, I think it ought to have something similar to the cheerleader one about if a band member shows symptoms.
So you could take that same one and make it appropriate for the band.
Right.
That would, okay.
You can combine it more or less.
You could almost
Would you like
combine
to
those two
combine them?
articles.
Would you like to combine these two articles for now?
Mhm.
All right, we'll combine them.
Mhm. Article 24, field trips and club trips under extracurricular, co-curricular activities. There's a typo in the mandatory practice. Suspend should be suspended. See, there's your virtual field trips. You got anything, Beth? Ron, Jerry, you good with 24? Done.
So the questions, these 3 pages of questions, we've answered those now. Evidently.
I thought I opened my document. Cindy, did you hear Bev?
Do I have them?
They were with Lydia's document that she sent.
Okay, so, those are being worked on by the legal team, and a lot of those will fall into the next round of recommendations.
Thank you. So do you need an official board action to accept this the way that we amended it?
I got a question. Who's the legal team?
Pebble and Wagner.
Yeah.
All right.
We only have one action item, but there's also this Blue Sky Academy attached under there.
Okay, let's go ahead and review that then so that the motion can include. Did we also need to approve the school start date? Or are you ready for that
We're
one?
not ready for the school start date yet, are we?
Okay. So Mrs. Bohatch, do you want to talk about the Blue Sky part of it?
Blue Sky Academy. So we currently have a contract with the Ohio Valley ESC for the Blue Sky online platform. We had to create two quotes in which we put a few students on that had not been successful in any other method. And there was some mentors to the ESC. Now ESC is reaching out because of the potential of some families where you could just use some 100%. They're reaching out with a service that they have a kindergarten time. So this is just a contract with the ESC for the Blue Sky Academy. And it's another option for us to offer to our families as we look through what inclusion will look like. The pros to having something like this is that it gives students who are saying, parents are saying, I want to take 100%. It gives them an option to do, keep up with the learning that is in line with what we're needing as far as current standards. The other side of it is or to another district when we don't provide something. And if you look at all the plans from rolling out other across state, they're offering this online component as well.
So just the cost, it's $1,500 per semester for K through 5. Is that's per student?
For students, but K through 5 for students. And high school or 12 to 85.
Of course.
And that's
And then do each student have the mentor or only if they need the mentor?
So they have as part of the service as
Okay.
well. So there's somebody checking in on them. There's also a learning coach provided through the company, the platform. There's the online teacher. There's 24-hour support service for the tech piece of it. This was a meeting that I sat in on Monday morning, and Andy Brooks of the Ohio Valley ESC presented, or had a presenter present the whole platform. And Washington County districts, Noble County, they're all looking into this as a potential alternative.
So do they provide you with a Chromebook or something, or you have to supply your own?
We'll need a supply device. They will, the students have to have access to internet, whether it's a hotspot or home internet or whatever. That's
But they could use one of our Chromebooks for that.
right. And that way we keep the students as our
will still receive the foundation money for that.
Right.
And something you'll see in the education piece coming forward is allowing that piece as a choice for parents, not a requirement, but that's another piece for them, for us to be able to offer that.
So what happens? What happens if the district gets shut down and we have to go 100% remote? Do we still use this or do we?
That for those who enrolled at the start of the semester, the idea is you can't have kids coming back and forth. Once they commit to it, they need to stay in for a whole semester. Keep that coursework. So everything else will be on the responsibility of our district. For educating the student department. We get shut down.
And we wouldn't go to this 100%.
Right.
Okay. We would do our own remote plan. Okay.
So is there any thinking of looking at that 9 weeks versus semester? Or you feel that's too often?
I've seen some other districts doing it, I think, by the 9 weeks.
Or maybe to the online. There's a lot of things that have to occur in the structure of those courses that are built by the semester, so they would have to figure out, especially if they're coming in on like the second grade period. Then they've got to figure out what they've covered, what they haven't covered, and what to dig out. And it's just much easier for everyone and for that learning process if they go the entire time. Yeah, that they come from their company as well.
Any other questions on Blue Sky? Edgenuity?
I make a motion to approve old business as of with the changes we discussed tonight.
I added it on there.
Okay.
I'll second the motion. Voting is open.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Gust?
Yes.
Mr. Winkler?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you to every person that participated on a subcommittee group. I know that there were hours and hours of time, and I know that we're not done. So thank you so much at this benchmark, and I look forward to continue working with you, but it is much appreciated. We are moving on to personnel. Moving on to personnel, the administrative, is there any questions on the job description for the transportation coordinator? Is this, this job description removes the courier duties, correct? Okay. Is this the same pay that Sammy had? Okay. For this position, do we have a test? Okay. So on the supervisor's line, in the absence of supervisor, supervises classified transportation staff. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
The idea is we start thinking about succession planning in these departments. Like in this department, that person is kind of like in training, so not allowed to go if Jason retires sometime in the future. Hopefully, we can hire from within that person that's been under his tutelage this entire time. That's how the new job description allows for, in his absence, still under his guidance, that opportunity to have sit in that role, learn that role, and when he is not there, help in managing that department. We call them coordinators. In a lot of instances, they're like an assistant.
So like can you give an example of what kind of supervision the coordinator would have to provide to, like, the transportation staff would be like the bus drivers?
Well, let's say Jason takes a route and he's driving a route, and I don't know, Jason, what would be something that would come in that while you're out on the route, an assistant could do for you? Re-signing out the route?
Route, or if there would be a late edition trip or something like that, then we would have to hustle to find a driver to cover that trip, or, athletic sports event, whatever it would be.
Let's say
Something
Jason's
similar
in the
to that.
dead zone, they can't get a hold of him, they can act on that, fill that role, in his absence.
Is there the ability to obtain certificates, like a Class B CDL license? Stability, it should be in there, they must CDL license. Just the ability to get it. Should have it in there in that job description. They must have that.
Yeah, but then are we gonna run into the situation where we're so short bus drivers that this person can't do their job because they gotta run a route? And then,
That's not the problem there. What I'm saying is, anybody in transportation should have a CDL. Their coordinator, director, whatever, they should have their CDLs. It should be mandatory if they have. Whether we use them for driving or not.
I would agree with you.
I agree.
That's something we need to be done. And
Mark that down.
Write it down. It's on recording, Jerry, right beside you.
What's that recording?
Oh, it stopped, sorry.
it's out of order. You blew it up with that statement, Rob.
I'm kidding.
I retract that.
We'll read that. Put static right there. All right.
So where will you move that to? Performance responsibilities? Or other functions?
Requirements, so.
So back to like the supervising or in Jason's absence, would the coordinator be able to consult with Linda O'Connor to have that temporary authority to do that without giving? I think I would be more comfortable with that, but do you see, like, is there a pro or a con there for you, Jason?
I mean, it would always be a plus, to have that extra body available to help, like I say, if I am out or whatever, if I have to take a route or whatever it would be, then there would be somebody there to step up, because sometimes we've run into that issue, whether it would be, a bus broke down, or we're trying to figure, the mechanics are trying to figure out what to do with it, what do you. No, I don't believe so. No.
I think both of these positions still fall under the org chart of her, but you have to give them some leadership
leadership guidelines that, not to micromanage the position, that they can do it, but if you want to restrict some of that, there is some restrictions in there. They don't have full access to do Jason's job, but if you want to take a little bit more out of it, but giving those responsibilities in a succession plan is saying, hopefully, if you put the right person in there and he's not allowed to leave, but if it happens, you hopefully have the right person trained, and what you're looking for is then a new assistant and not a supervisor or a director. So.
And I get that, and it's a good thought, but just the coordinator working with Jason, the transportation supervisor, I think that they'll learn, like, you know what I mean? Like they're firsthand right there.
Another example. Say he's out on 14 days of COVID. And what we run into right now in a lot of our positions, the way we've structured things is we've got one man that runs the whole show. In a job description like that, we already have a succession plan put in place to where we have someone that has some responsibilities and can run for 14 days for us. Keep things afloat. It's only in the absence of this, the role above them, the supervisor above them.
Right, but I guess I'm used to if in the absence of a supervisor, then it goes up. And like Linda would make those decisions and keep it running, you know, then directly relate to the coordinator to make it happen.
She's oversight, but someone doing the daily, everyday managing part, bigger items aren't done in the absence of someone. Maybe, you know, let's say he's out for 6 months, then Linda has to take a bigger role in there of doing larger things like purchase orders and purchasing a bus or something like that. But just the everyday assisting of personnel, things like someone's sick and she's got to move people around to get a bus going, and answering the phone with a parent instead of waiting until Jason comes in, they could actually help problem solve with a parent and a child trying to get on some issue with the busing. It gives them a little power of not having to wait till I can call up the chain to take care of smaller items like that.
They wouldn't be able to do that? They wouldn't be able to talk to the parent and child and.
You wait for your supervisor because of the chain of command. The way your job description is written out is, yes, wait till Jason gives her the okay to do it in the role that she was sitting in.
I was going to ask you how different it is than the old job description. I should have asked you before.
Really do anything until she got somebody else to tell her she could do it.
And Sarah, this is Linda. I have had to above and beyond day to day.
Something I can hear.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just commenting to Sarah that sometimes, yes, I do have
I hear voices.
up in here.
There. Right here.
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me, Sarah? Oh.
Yes, go ahead, Linda.
Okay. Yeah, I was telling Sarah that yes, sometimes above and beyond the day-to-day operations, you never know when something needs assistance. Just yesterday, some of the food was left over at River, and Sammy ended up having to go from Skyview over to River to take half that over to Woodsfield. See, that would have been very helpful to have someone, a courier or the transportation coordinator, be able to help with something like that.
may not have. In the absence of Jason, that next person under him could have made those arrangements to go get that food taken care of for another department. Just give me an example of, it would have been helpful if, I don't know what happened on that day, but that's an example of how not having to wait till Jason got out of the dead zone to call and make sure that it'd be okay to timesheet someone to go over there and get that material. Food. The most valuable part to all of that is giving a little leadership in the absence of someone above you. Still under the guidance of Linda's title, is that you're giving them some leadership to be able to train, to be able to move up into another position sometimes.
Well, okay. We got a lot of new employees here in the district.
What's that now?
We got a lot of new employees. Steve George is more.
Use your microphone, Jerry.
Huh?
Use your microphone.
Well, I just wondered, because some of our employees won't have sick days.
Right. And that's
And if
something
it's no fault of hers. I mean, you can't see us stopping the pay. Especially if they don't have the days accumulated like Steve started, the girl in the cafeterias and all different employees.
Yeah.
Their contracts don't state how many sick days they get.
For some reason, their contracts don't say, well, after you're here a year, you get 2 weeks or 14 days or something.
No, they would accumulate like a teacher, one in a quarter.
We follow the CBAs.
Yeah.
They-
One and a quarter a month.
They accumulate just like the CBAs do, or the
Okay.
other
So-
unions do.
so
So
they-
they do get.
They have to
on
work
a-
so long to accumulate so many
They
days.
start immediately. They get 1.25 sick days a month as soon as they start.
Okay.
And I do believe there is, once the attorney gets back to us, I seen somewhere where there is law that's coming down stating that they are not required to take CRS. I don't know where it's at. I did see it across.
Yeah, I don't think any of our employees should have to use their sick days if they were contracted. Just my opinion.
So I don't know about you guys, but someone texted me and said when they use the microphones, they can't hear on the online. So I don't know if we pass the headset to them when they're talking.
Rob's using his headset.
I got mine on.
Can they hear Cindy on her device or by the microphone?
I'll try to use
I don't think they can hear you.
hear her voice.
They aren't picking up the mics. This last meeting, they couldn't hear Lydia on the third mic.
But because we're all on Zoom on our own devices, she said that helped.
Yeah.
So should I stay unmuted?
Can if you want to, then I'll use my side.
Okay. Any more questions on the job description for the transportation coordinator?
I make a motion to approve personnel with the addition of the CDL requirement on the transportation coordinator.
This administrative that or all three?
All, unless someone needs something pulled out. Was there something added since I printed? Because I just have 2. Well, it's 1 through 3.
Well, 3 personnel items, but the
Okay.
first one is to vote all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're voting on administrative rate now.
I did all 3, or administrative and certified, but if you need something pulled out, we can do it separate.
Tess, can you tell if Jerry can be heard now? I guess I don't know he's talking.
Someone said that.
No.
I'll say.
Okay, I put on the approval of personnel items.
On the first line in personnel for approving all 4 lines, I put with the amended transportation coordinator job description. Is that okay?
I think so.
Okay, voting is open. Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Winkler,
Yes.
Mr. Gust,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. Motion carries.
I just need to, there is supplementals on here. When I printed it this afternoon, there wasn't. Just so everyone knows that.
Are you okay to let your motion stand, Beth?
Oh. I put this.
So the table ice is a hire for today at the Career Center. And putting his extended days on, they realized that the cosmetology teacher got missed on the last round of supplementals. So that's why you see 2. And 1 new hire and then a miss that happened with the other supplementals.
Are you okay to let it stand?
I'm fine.
Did you get that, Jerry and Ron?
Yes.
All right, I need a motion.
I got a question before we adjourn.
Okay,
I'm gonna be at the rules.
we can't. We can't. It's a special meeting.
Okay. I think Microsoft said in the interview.
Are you talking all interviews?
Yeah, when I told them we were in the interview, I was like, say it in mine. I'm gonna try to catch the board and see if they're what.
Well, would we be able to put that on the August board agenda?
That's gonna be kind of late.
Do you have any interviews coming up? Any other positions?
Is it,
The nursing.
Remember, I'm set in on an interview, as long as they can set in on an interview, as long as they don't, make any comments, can't they?
Yes.
I don't know.
They did before, I mean, I know, they did before.
I mean, if there's a problem, that's fine.
No, I don't have a
You
problem.
explain to me afterwards why you can't.
No, I don't know why you can't.
I would say the disruption is the biggest concern, as long as, you know,
As long as you don't say that, the board member, you should be able to.
I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Voting is open. Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Gust,
Yes.
Mr. Winkler.
This meeting is adjourned. The record showed 9:08. We adjourned. Thank you.
I take this charge. You want me to take it home or you want to just wait till the next meeting? So I won't have no.